And then I'll probably either use you or Aaron just to demonstrate when we go over. All right, so hi everyone, I'm Winston Tsai. I'm a NASM certified personal trainer and an ISSA certified fitness nutrition coach. I've been training clients for about 9 to 10 years now, almost a decade. And I'm just gonna go over 3 of the most troublesome areas, specifically people who sit at a desk, areas where they're gonna struggle with mobility wise. So that's gonna be your thoracic, and within the thoracic we'll go over extension, flexion, and rotation. And then we'll go over hip flexors and their relationship with the hamstrings. So they kind of tie into together mobility wise. So, and then when we go over thoracic, and then when we go over the hip flexors and hamstrings, I'm just gonna go over techniques that I would use to get ready for a workout to make the effects longer lasting. A lot of people, when they go into mobility over the past 5 or 10 years, you'll see people either choose just kind of smashing, rolling out SMR, soft tissue work, or you'll be on the end of like they do a lot of flexibility work, but they're missing getting that tissue under load and strengthening to bulletproof that area. That's where we're really gonna get the injury prevention, right? So just because you're very flexible doesn't mean you're gonna have great mobility and stability within that joint, and there will still be imbalances, right? So you could have great flexibility with the hamstring, but if the hip flexors are really weak, you're not really gonna be able to access the hamstrings and like the true horsepower to what the hamstrings can offer. So we'll go over, so I mean, and you know, there's a lot of camps that will say, you know, SMR, soft tissue work is, you know, completely useless, and I'm still of the belief that, I mean, I think you should start with a little bit of soft tissue work, desensitize the area, get that muscle tone more malleable. That's gonna allow you to get into better positions biomechanically. Then we'll go into some stretches to lengthen the tissue, and then from there, we can then challenge that tissue under load to create longer lasting effects and better mobility, better stability within those joints and muscles. So from there, let's see, okay. So Aaron or Joe, if you guys want to come up, we'll kind of go into some thoracic stuff. So with the thoracic, we'll start with, if I was going to do some extension, we don't have a foam roller here, but you could you would normally have, so let's lay down here. But we can, let's go.
Do you have a towel?
So let's go on your back.
Do you have like a long towel?
I don't think I do have a towel this year, no.
So normally if we're trying to work extension, I'm gonna put a foam roller through his mid back up here. He's going to hold on to this stick right here. And then we're gonna put the foam roller around his, so when I say thoracic, that's gonna be like right in here through the back, right? So kind of his mid back area, because up here we got cervical, down here we got lumbar. So we're gonna go or imagine there's a foam roller right here, about maybe like 6 inches in diameter. And then he is going to be getting some lumbar and thoracic extension. And this is gonna be kind of opening himself up. Before this movement though, and that's good, I come up here.
Would you use that bar? Would you use that, or would you use something weighted? Or
So it depends on where the person is in their program, right? And we can progress to heavier. So
in the beginning.
in the beginning, I might even just have somebody just with
lay over the
yeah, and even just put their hands here and just start working on
Yeah.
some repetitions back and forth, and then from there they can progress to something a little bit heavier, maybe even carrying a dumbbell and going through some reps that way.
Use an exercise ball?
Yeah, so and then I'll either start with that, and then I'll go into some soft tissue work even before that. Use something like a Gemini. You can use 2 lacrosse balls that are taped together. So we'll start this. We'll start right there on the upper thoracic. You can slowly lay it back down, and then you can bring your knees up, and then keep these on the ground. Then we're gonna hands here, and then we're gonna slowly roll down each segment of the vertebrae, and then he can lift his hips up to kind of create some more tension. You just heard that little cavitation, all right? And then you're gonna bring your hips down. He's gonna relax. He's gonna spend about like 3 to 5 seconds at each spot and kind of go through flexion and extension. So kind of, flexion extension, and then he's gonna roll down another segment, do that again, flexion, extension. You can add a 45-pound weight if you wanna add a little bit more deeper soft tissue work as you progress with the client, depending on where that client is, if they have more muscle. So like I said, we'll do some soft tissue work, we'll do some lengthening, and then from there, we'll stress the thoracic under load.
Would you work your way back up at this point, or?
Yeah, so sometimes it will get stuck under the shirt, but I'll kind of go down till about right here, if you can see my hands. So let's keep going down a little bit further. And what a lot of people don't realize about the thoracic is, so a lot of people know that the hips, that's kind of like the engine to the lower body, right? To keep having healthy knees and ankles, and just give you access to more strength. And then we can start coming up, and then we'll finish. And the thoracic is, a lot of people don't realize that that's the horsepower of the engine to the upper body. A lot of people, when they think, let's say even just getting in a front rack position, you know, people mobilize, they're working on internal, external rotation of the shoulder joint, and they're smashing away, they're doing all this shoulder mobility, and that's good. And they'll wonder, like, why can't I get into a front rack position of a barbell? And they think it's their shoulders that limiting. Oh, I just have really bad shoulders. It's really just the thoracic being glued down. And so a lot of times, like in shoulder movements, so let's say if somebody's reaching up overhead, they get stuck here. If I'm having them do an overhead, or whether they're like abducting the arm out here, but that last little bit, their shoulders, their scaps, their traps get pinched up here, and they can't get into that straight arm comfortably. That's just because their thoracic is tight, and they're not working on extension, flexion, rotation, so they're losing a lot of power. And then that is why a lot of people get shoulder injuries. And if you're working at a desk and you're just in this position all the time, like, this isn't inherently like gonna cause too much pain, but it's gonna decrease performance, and it will cause pain if you're not, like, you should have access to those other ranges. But when somebody's working at a desk, they're gonna lose that positioning just because they're not, through their workouts, they're not thinking, oh, I have to mobilize or go through rotation or do some of these things. So let's go into some rotational stretches. Let's sit up here. And then actually for this one, I'm going to demonstrate, and then we'll maybe have Aaron go through it as well. So this is going to be a little bit more of an advanced movement, and then I can show some regressions. So we'll grip right here, we'll grip underneath. You can take a PVC pipe. I realize that not everyone's going to have stick mobility at the gym or where they're at. So we go here, we're going to go to the opposite side.
And if people didn't even have that, you could use almost like a broom handle.
Yeah,
right?
you can use a broom handle. If you are going to use a stick, make sure it's on carpet or there's something grippy. This has grips, so.
Yeah.
Let's go down here. And a lot of people make this mistake of like sinking back into their hips, and you want to kind of stay a little bit more upright. So let's go right here. This, look up. Try to breathe through your rib cage and stare at the opposite ceiling that way. Then we'll do the other side. And this is just getting that rotation. This is opening up your mid-back. This will allow your scapula to move a lot more freely. For the longest time, I would do a lot of shoulder mobility, and I'd wonder why I'm still getting a knot back up here. Or the biggest thing, I think the biggest complaint I get from people is shoulder pain, rotator cuff pain, and just a knot that's just stuck right here. And even with massage work, it's temporary relief, right? The massage is great because it's going to allow for you to be pain-free, and then allow you to get into these movements, and then take that tissue under load, and then that's going to create longer lasting effects. So then the next time you go into, getting a massage, they can go further, and they can get deeper in, and then you can make further improvements. Same thing with Wes too. Like, this will improve your chiropractic adjustments, so that way Wes can then start to, there's the progression in chiropractic work too. So
think people also don't realize is like when your thoracic's flat and not moving, it's gonna load your lumbar more.
Yes.
So people keep getting adjusted, roll out, and don't know why it's not working when really the thoracic is like locked.
100%. I
Which
mean,
most
that's
will always figure out.
Yeah,
that's why I think the thoracic is the most important aspect of the upper body, because it's going to allow the shoulders, the lumbar, everything to flow and move correctly, right?
Yeah, and I'll interrupt you for a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
But if you want to turn this way, and I'll show it towards the camera, the thoracics are made, they're set on planes at about 45 degrees, so they're made to rotate very well. Where your lumbars, they're set up on tracks that are very vertical. So like you're talking about patients being or clients being very stuck in here from their sitting jobs or lack of mobility. If this doesn't rotate, then this starts to rotate. This is not made to rotate very well. This is meant to rotate. So you have to do these mobility things just to stay healthy, just to stay basically not falling forward and not overloading your lumbars, which I know you're gonna get into some lumbar stuff too, but I just wanted to make that point known too.
Yep.
Cool.
So, and then I know I said this is kind of an advanced movement. Oh, and another thing to touch on is the big part of what I noticed is when I started to do more rotational movements, it allowed my serratus, which is probably my serratus anterior, which is probably the most important shoulder stabilizer. It allowed that to engage a lot better into my lifts. Then that created a lot more stable presses, right? So when the serratus anterior is either underactive or weak, you'll notice in a lot of your presses, your flexors, extensors, and your triceps, they're gonna start trying to stabilize, and then that's where a lot of people get tennis elbow or golfer's elbow. And so as soon as a lot of people start focusing on rotational movements of the thoracic, they'll notice a lot of their elbow pain will go away, along with shoulder pain. So,
You have
like I said,
scapula that like.
yeah, your scapula starts to glide and move correctly. You get proper scapulohumeral rhythm. That will also a lot of times fix when people have scapular winging, right? And that's probably something for another day, but let's go into some regression. So I know everyone might not have a stick, so we can also, Aaron, you wanna just come down here and we'll just go through thread the needle, right? So we're just gonna have Aaron get on all fours, quadruped position, and we're just gonna go through just like this. So I'm gonna have him, let's spread it just a little bit more, there we go. He's gonna thread the needle. I like to actually take this hand, either press on through the ground or he can press through here. So let's put this hand right here. And he's gonna press into the ground, move, like so, add some pressure. You see that's gonna create more torque and he's gonna get more rotation through that mid-thoracic. And that's gonna make it a little bit more of like an under a load type of stretch.
How long do you typically have them stay in the position?
So, sometimes I will go through duration of maybe 3 to 4 sets of 30 seconds to get into 2 minutes of time to really get that soft tissue to change. Or I'll go through 10 to 15 reps, hold for 2 or 3 seconds. So let's go to the next side. Yep, let's go here. Hands supinated.
Could you put like a yoga block under their shoulder if they can't?
Yes, yep, exactly.
So that'd be more of a regression.
Yep. And then we're gonna do another one after this that where you're kind of more upright, and then we'll actually get the hip flexor and the anterior chain as well. Okay, that's good. And you can come up from there. Thank you, Aaron. And then the other one would just be standing. This is probably one of my favorite ones. It's split diagonal stretch. It's pretty hard to do in terms of getting normally the split diagonal stretch would be standing. This is the regression is kneeling. So we're gonna go right here, hand on shoulder. We're gonna reach back, grip here, and then the more mobile you get, the more this hip flexor will be able to come down further. You'll be able to sink into it more, right? So to start, you might be a little bit more right here, not as spread out, and then as you get more mobile, you can come through more. And then I'll sometimes just kind of go through some rotations like this to warm up before I eventually try and reach back over. And this is just gonna get this hip flexor, this is gonna get the abdominals, and then it's also gonna get my back as well. And what's funny about this is doing this on both sides, when I'm done with this, not only does my lower body improve, but a lot of all my pressing movements will be stronger, my scapula will glide better, and there'll be less winging. Everything will be connected through the Stratus better. Yeah. And then we'll go into, so for getting that under load, right? So that was, we did some soft tissue work. We did, we took it through some stretches and some range. We don't have a kettlebell or dumbbell here, but generally what I would do is I would probably start with, right here, I would have like a dumbbell, just like so, and come up and go like this. And as you get stronger, you can progressively overload with a heavier dumbbell. And then I like to do lately windmills. So I would take a kettlebell would be better. We'll just add a little bit better counterbalance. And then I would just lift up here, rotate, and then be able to come all the way down, keeping this arm towards the sky, and bring this hand down here. As we go closer to the midline, they'll be challenging it even
What would
more.
you find would be the patients people will try to avoid to do? Like if they're doing that, what should they be not trying to do? Or
So
noticing it
what you'll
working well?
see, especially in people that if they're pretty tight, and this is kind of a more advanced movement, you'll see like a lot of bending of the knees, a lot of like they'll be here, they'll try and go like this. They won't be able to keep their legs straight. So the regression of that, grab something that's a little bit,
It's almost like a chair or something.
yes, something a chair, something that they can that is higher elevated, so they
Gives
can
them
get their hand
stability.
in. Yep.
What about
exactly.
some exercises for like contraindicated rotational clients, like herniations or even like rib issues?
So, like for your thoracic, you're saying?
Well, like if somebody has like herniations, like rotations like that would like
It would
or
depend on where
limbs
they're.
subluxing.
It would depend on where they're where they are in their treatment, right? So if they're for them, I'd probably I've never really had an issue with somebody starting with just threading the needle.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just slowly work non-weight bearing, and then as they are pain free, I mean start with the lightest, like can soup, like same thing if you were to do with a rotator cuff, right? Start with like hands up on the wall, then you work towards the tomato. Same concept applies to the thoracic.
Upper thoracic extension also just like little tiny
Yep.
lift ups off the
Yep,
ground.
exactly.
That's probably my favorite.
Yep. Hip flexors. So I'll start, like I said, again with some SMR, some soft tissue work. I'll use a ball. This is it's called a Supernova, but any type of mobility ball you can even get on Amazon will work. Smaller Supernova will be a little bit more pinpoint, but we'll go with this one. We'll just come down here. We'll just kind of get right up into the hip flexors and the rectus femoris. And I will spend about 10 seconds or so on an area. I might even flex and come back down. And then once I feel, and this will be for your average person doing this, is gonna be pretty painful. You can also use a foam roller, but I do like to use something a little bit more pointed. You can use a Theragun, if anyone has a massage device, these also work as well. I won't spend too much time going into that. I don't think we'll even demonstrate it, but these can work as well. I think these are go a little bit deeper though. So I'll do some soft tissue work, then we'll lengthen the hip flexor. So, Wes, I don't really want to mark up your walls.
You got an eraser, it'd be alright.
Okay, so we're gonna go through a couch stretch. The closer your knee is to the wall, the harder it's going to be. Maybe we'll start a couple inches off the wall. Then we'll just kind of go right back into it. You don't want to be super extended. Tuck the rib cage. Squeeze the glute. Once you squeeze the glute, you're gonna feel the hip flexor, rectus femoris a lot more. If you're feeling it through the quad too much, I'll lean forward here, grab this, have your hand grab your toes, and then you're just gonna pull, and then press your pelvis into the ground, rotate, and then you're gonna be able to feel it a little bit more in the hip flexors, rectus femoris. I already mentioned it, but I'll also do split diagonal stretch to lengthen hip flexors. But what a lot of people don't do is, and this is what I mostly want to go over, is just strengthening the hip flexors under load. So a lot of people, they'll stretch their hamstrings chronically and it'll just snap right back. And they're wondering, like, Winston, like, what's the best way to lengthen the hamstrings? And that's honestly, if you can just strengthen the hip flexors, rectus femoris, and you'll get an instant release. So I would say the best way to get access to those hamstrings is to, we'll start with here, hip flexor raises, just like this. We'll start with some reps and then some holds. That's gonna be too hard for most people. Regression, right here. Just like so. Really working on chest up, closing that angle, closing that gap. A lot of people will sit here, do this. Better than nothing, but you definitely wanna close that gap. If that's too hard, toes pointing towards the sky. And then we're just gonna do some leg lifts like this. And like I said, this is really gonna strengthen your hip flexors, rectus femoris, and give you access to your hamstrings. When you're done with that, your hinge will be a lot better, right? A lot of people, especially when they sit at a desk, hip flexors get tightened, they get shortened. When they just do a simple hinge, they're here. That's because their hip flexors aren't strong enough to be able to push that pelvis back, right? So you can just see right here, if these are weak, you're gonna be like this. When you go to pick something up, you're here. Like, as these get stronger, you'll just notice you'll naturally just have a better hinge. And then because you have a better hinge, hip flexors are lengthened, or hamstrings are lengthened, you'll just have a lot more power through your deadlifts and any hinging motion. Okay?
And then arguably like safety for picking up anything in the house, like doing
100%.
all these like functional activities in your day to day.
Yeah, I mean, and then even so, it's like with the thoracic mobility, right?
Yeah.
Because like some people, they work on, you know, extension, flexion, but then like, say I want to rotate, right? If you don't have that ability, that's why some people like go to pick up a piece of pencil and they just don't have access.
Throw their back out.
Throw their back out, right? So, let's see what else we got here. So, okay, so, another one, that one was strengthening your hip flexors. Hip flexor raises are just gonna take the hip flexors under load. It's a very isolated strengthening movement, but I do like to take the hip flexors through flexion, or like through length under load. And what I would do is, we don't have anything to step up, but a step up is gonna be a regression, and it's going to allow you to get a better stretch. So we're gonna go through here, like some people can start with stick, just to help with balance. But we're gonna go through like a split squat right here, and we're gonna stretch this hip flexor. And we'll start with this. This is a regression, right? And then imagine this foot is elevated, which is gonna allow me to get even
How much
more.
elevation?
I would start with probably 245 pound.
So like,
Yeah.
not like a stool, but like, you know, like 4 or 5 inches.
Exactly. And then it all depends on, like I said, where the client is,
That
right?
makes sense.
With all of these things, it's going to be very dependent upon the client that I'm seeing. So, but this is kind of just for the general public. Nothing, you know, inherently too, like, you know, out of the ordinary. Probably a 45 to 245. 245 is the mobility's kind of pretty tight. So, start here, and then eventually you'll go under load with dumbbells, right? So then you're gonna go here, and in this case, we're actually going to kind of go up through extension, be more extended through here, abs tight though, and really stretch that hip flexor under a load, and then come back. I'm even okay if this heel comes off a little bit. This is also gonna give you good ankle mobility. If you kind of go, if you're more bent over, you're gonna get more glute, but that's not what we're trying to focus on. We're trying to focus on this hip flexor. Squeeze this glute, drive through here. And that type of split squat is really gonna, you'll notice even just after a week, you'll have a lot more access and strength to your hip flexors, and your hinge will be a lot better.
Will you be able to do that if you have poor ankle mobility?
So this is actually gonna strengthen your ankles. Now, like I said, like if somebody has really bad ankles, I'll start with I'm gonna have to rehab that area first. I'll take 5 3-pound dumbbell, bottom of their foot, take like a Kevlar strap, and then just have them start with rotations, right? And as their ankle gets stronger, then they can go into some of these exercises. But generally, even clients with prior history of ankle sprains and whatnot, as soon as they start doing this, a lot of their ankle issues go away. And then lastly, we wanted some hamstrings. Same thing with the hamstrings. Kind of sit on a box, take a Theragun. And this is if you need. Not everyone has to always start with soft tissue work, but I just like to allows them to relax and get into the stretch a little bit better. We'll just sit on something straight.
You want this chair?
Yeah, we can do that. Take a little bit more pointed ball. A lacrosse ball actually doesn't work that well with this because it's not high enough. This is like a good in between. I go right there to the medial hamstring. We'll put some pressure and we'll just kind of take it through some lengthening and shortening. Then I'll go through different areas. This is kind of a soft chair, so it's not gonna really feel it. You want to be on a harder surface. Whenever you're doing some soft tissue work with these mobility balls, the harder the surface, the more it's going to transfer into the muscle. So we'll just do about maybe 30 seconds to a minute of that. Get the area loosened up a little bit. And then probably my favorite hamstring mobility exercise I like to do is elephant walks. It's very simple, doesn't require anything. And actually for this, Aaron, I'll have you come over here just so I can speak while I'm. All right, so for elephant walks, hands right here, feet shoulder width apart. Let's go a little closer. Yep. And then we're just gonna go here, and then we're just gonna start coming down, knees slightly bent. Yep. And you want your belly to kind of feel it pressing against your thighs. Yep. And then from here. So depending on the person's mobility, you might have something like a foam roller or a box that they can hold on to. So one thing right here, just so they can help feel a little bit more stable. Hands right over here. And now he is going to, keeping the belly attached to their thighs. You don't want it to disengage too much. Lengthen one leg at a time. So let's just lengthen this left leg. You can see he's very tight, so he's not able to get much extension through here, but that's okay. Start with just what you can, and after about 30 reps each side, you'd be amazed how much tension that takes off the lumbar. And like I said, the hamstrings will definitely be feeling a lot better. So let's just keep going. Show that, and the reason why it's called elephant walks is because if you actually look from behind, one hip is going up higher than the other. Try and keep yourself square and belly attached, yep, and then lengthen one at a time. And you're gonna, a lot of times people will kind of go back and forth. You actually want the leg to come back before you start extending with the other leg. You can see it's starting to loosen up a little bit. Yep. That's good.
My hands are already flatter up.
Yeah, and then eventually your hands will get lower to the ground. If you want to make it a little bit more intense, you can actually take your hands and wrap them around your ankles like this, pull yourself down, and then lengthen.
Nah, that's okay.
Yeah. Yep. So I mean, these are going to be, that's okay, Aaron, that's good. Some of the biggest things I find in people, even whether you're just working at a desk, but I mean, even just like your average gym goer who's like still like squatting 315, benching 315, you'd be surprised how weak they are at some of these movements and how tight they are. As soon as you start gaining access and strengthening through length under a load, you're just bulletproofing your body. You're going to prevent a lot of injuries, and then just your performance is also going to go through the roof. So, but yeah.
Love it. Thanks, man. We
Yeah, no
appreciate
problem.
you.
Yeah, thank you.